little. Before we start, I just want to point out to you that I've since I've lost my voice. I'm recording this a couple of days after the actual episode was recorded, and I just want to say that's why my voice was a bit iffy on the podcast. Also, for anyone who's listening to this on a podcast, which I think most of our listeners are, and not on YouTube, then sometimes we reference that. Look, here we are, and look how different we look, or some such. And that's only because we were actually together, and we were just commenting on, the van and stuff. So if you want to actually see what was happening, then you can see that on YouTube, where we will post the whole video. Thank you. Bye. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Politics, Renewable Heating and Gas. I'm Ben and I run B Express Plumbing and Heating based in Northwest London. I'm gas safe registered, I'm working towards my MCS, and I'm a Which Trusted Trader, and with which I have won Trader of the Month.
Hi, and I'm Stuart. I run H&H Gas Services based in Manchester. I'm also a gas safe registered engineer. Okay, Ben, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Politics, Renewable Heating and Gas. That only took 3 times for me to get right. So today is an extra special episode because today Stuart and I are together in the van, as you can see, in Stuart's van. And that's because I have come up with my family for a family celebration to Manchester, which is where Stuart is. So as our name suggests, politics, we wanted to discuss the latest politics of what the by-elections that happened today on the 20th of July 23, and what they could really mean in our eyes. So, Stuart, there were 3 by-elections. The Conservatives only won one of them. One of the others was won by Labour, and the other one by the Lib Dems. So, what do you think that the Uxbridge win of the Conservatives really tells us?
I don't know. I've not really followed it, to be honest.
Okay, so obviously at the moment everyone's very upset with the Conservative government, or doesn't think the Conservative government's doing its job very well. I actually think that Uxbridge was won by the Conservatives is because it's actually going to be affected by the Labour idea of the ULEZ expanding. I say Labour because the Mayor of London is Sadiq Khan is Labour, although some Labour MPs in London don't like the idea either. And because of the Conservatives being the only party who was against ULEZ, because of the extra cost that people are going to have to pay when ULEZ expands, and therefore that's why we think, Stuart and I think, yes, Stuart, even though he doesn't know that he thinks this, he does think that it's because it's too expensive. And that leads on to something I think which is very, very important, because if people are saying no to ULEZ, what are they saying no to ULEZ about? So Stuart, being a Manchester and knowing nothing about what goes on in London, how much does ULEZ cost per day?
I don't know. I'd imagine around sort of £10 or something like that.
£12.50. Well done, Stuart. So £12.50 per day if your vehicle is not within the certain grade that the Mayor of London decides is good enough. I actually had to upgrade my own van in London because my old Renault was absolutely perfect and worked very well. I'd have to pay £12.50 every day and driving around my normal area. So I thought, forget that, I need to upgrade. Then the Mayor of London gave us a £4,000 grant to scrap my vehicle. My van was 7 to 10 years old, I can't remember anymore. So I scrapped the van, got the £4,000, put that down as a down payment for my current van, which I'm very happy with. But really, I'm paying monthly for a van to replace my old van, which I owned outright. So actually, I'm paying a fortune a month, around £350 a month, in order that I can have a vehicle, which before I didn't have to pay a penny for.
Well, there was actually a fresh air tax that was meant to be coming into Manchester, which also would have been in the older vehicles, especially HGVs, vans, lorries, buses. And again, I believe it would have been around the sort of £10 a day mark for a van, more than that for a lorry and a bus. And the reason they didn't end up doing it is because they also had a scrappage scheme like they had in London, which they were meant to be giving money to vehicle owners to be able to upgrade and businesses to be able to upgrade their vehicles. But unfortunately, local government didn't receive enough money from the government to be able to give everyone the correct amount of money or whatever it should have been. So the scheme is currently under review and has been for some time. But I believe by sort of 2025 or next couple of years, they definitely want to be bringing it in like they do in London.
I do think that the best way to get out of any of this is just to get an electric vehicle. But there's so many issues, at least within our trade of electric vehicles. So first of all,
mileage and range is a big one.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like to buy my own van, a Ford Transit Custom, as an electric van. However, that doesn't exist yet. It's coming out in a few months' time, but when it does, I'm expecting it to cost a third more than the current van is. So, which is just a ridiculous thing.
And then also,
especially with high interest rates that we have now, higher interest rates that we have now.
Exactly.
So it's going to cost a fortune to be able to buy. So I don't know if I would switch, even if I could. And then, you know, a lot of these vehicles say that they can travel 200 miles, but only if there's no weight in the back. I mean, how much weight do you reckon you have in the back of your van?
It's got to be a couple of hundred kilo in tools and equipment and materials.
I must carry easily half a ton.
And then there's the racking as well, which also weighs. And
I would carry half a ton just in tools and racking. And if I have a boiler and cylinder inside there, then it's going to go up.
Oh, so, and then there's also weather conditions. If it's cold, it kills the battery. If you put the air conditioning on, that will definitely lower the range and things like that as well.
On the plus side, though, we don't tend to travel huge amounts of range. You don't tend to travel when we're going job to job.
What is your sort of daily, how far do you go within sort of 15 miles, 20 miles?
Yeah, probably 20 miles max.
Yeah, so what sort of mileage are you doing a day? Sort of maximum up to 90, 100 miles?
Probably not even. Yeah.
I mean, I can go up to sort of 90 to 100 miles a day on a very, very busy day.
Yeah, but you're not going to be carrying a boiler and a cylinder in the back.
That's
you're just going to be carrying what you have now.
That's true, but if you get to charge the vehicle the day before, whatever.
But that would just be the thing that you have to do. Just like, you know, when your drill runs dry, you know, you see that the drill is, or your gas analyzer is losing battery. I always take that home at the end of the day and plug it in, and then it lasts for the next 30 jobs. So I think that's just something at the end of every day, like we plug in our phones, we'll just plug in our
Some
car.
mindsets will change in regards to that, I guess. But the technology is a little bit too new at the moment. I think people are a bit hesitant to take it up right now.
I think people who are pro it will get it. The people who are not so pro it won't get it. Very similar to heat pumps.
Exactly.
So we really wanted to, on this episode, we also want to talk about myths in the plumbing and heating world. Which is really great that we're doing this video together in a van, because when we say cylinder, you'll have no idea what we're talking about, because that's one of the myths, isn't it?
That is, when most people, when you come into a property and you ask somebody, where's your boiler? They take you straight upstairs to the airing cupboard where the hot water tank or cylinder is, and they go, look, there's my boiler.
Yeah. And then I normally say to that, I say, no, I mean the white one that's hanging on the wall. And they go, oh, that's downstairs. I go, yes, I'd like to see that one.
Exactly. That's a very common one. Another one that's very common is, as gas engineers, we obviously have to, you know, access the gas meter to be able to do all our testing, tightness and let-by testing to check for leaks and things like that. And when you ask people to show you the gas meter, inevitably you're taken to the electric meter.
Yeah. Because people don't seem to know what their gas meter is. So I do find that, I find it really odd though, because surely people know the difference between electricity and gas. Electricity is the hissy thing that comes out of the hob. and electricity is what you use
So
when you
mean
turn the
gas
lights
is
on.
the hissy thing.
Yeah, no, but
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know what I said. Yeah. So, but maybe they just don't know what it is because all they see is a white box on the wall with numbers floating past, and the gas meter is a big grey thing, or possibly white, and with numbers going past. So maybe they just can't tell. But for us, it's so obvious because you can see the gas pipe.
But it's what we do day in, day out.
ECV,
obviously. Yeah.
All the words that you don't know what
ECV,
we're talking about.
That's the emergency control valve for shutting off the gas supply
Yeah.
to a property in case of a gas leak or anything
What do you
like
call the bit on top of the meter?
the governor?
Yeah, or the governor. Not the governor. The
If you
governor.
Cockney, yeah.
Yeah, the London way of saying it.
Yeah,
It's definitely better.
Speaking of myths, another very common myth is, flushable wipes. People think that, you can flush wipes just because it's written flushable on the packet. It doesn't mean they're going to disintegrate like toilet paper, and it's probably one of the most common causes of clogs in sewers and things like that. Also, pouring oil down the sink, another big one.
An interesting thing that Stuart told me earlier today is about shared drains, which happens a lot in Manchester and also in London on older properties. So do you want to just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, if you go, I can't speak for London. I think is it Thames Valley Water?
No,
Who is it?
Thames.
Thames Water?
Thames Water. Yeah.
Well, in Manchester we have
The one that's going bust.
Oh right, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So in Manchester we have United Utilities, and I just had an interesting occurrence myself, where I came to a property where the main sewer had backed up, and normally you'd have to pay a drainage engineer to come with and to sort it out.
How much would a drainage engineer be?
A drainage engineer would probably be about £95 an hour.
Okay, yeah, that's
There are
about the
other
same
companies
in
out there
London.
like Dino Rod or whatever, and here spoke to you. We believe the blockage was actually on the street, so it would have been United Utilities or the waterboard's problem. They had to deal with it.
When would it be the customers?
So up into the boundary where the drain exits the property, say it goes down the driveway where it joins the road in the main city sewer, from that point onwards would actually be the waterboard's problem. And it's the same with the stop tap and water entering a property. So if the stop tap is on the road, then the customer doesn't have any responsibility for it. The waterboard would have to maintain it and replace it in case it leaked or snapped or anything like that. So here, same with drains, it's where it kind of the boundary of the property is. Normally it'd be the customer's responsibility, but here the waterboard came out and said, well, actually this is a shared drain where two properties go into the same drain on the street, so it's actually their responsibility to maintain. And they came out and they cleared it free of charge. I mean, the customer would have had to pay anything up to sort of around £200 plus to get that cleared by a company, and they
Probably
camered it as well. They camered it as well, so you could have been £300-400. So you can imagine the customer was very, very happy.
So when Stuart says camered it, there's a CCTV camera that is sent down on the
Flexible cable
on like a flexible, but hardened flexible
and waterproof,
cable,
obviously.
and that goes through, and they can actually see, are there any cracks in the pipe? Have tree roots broken in? Are there any rats dead and horrible stuff?
I actually wrote down, I'll just see if there's any other interesting plumbing myths I can see.
This is Stuart doing some research.
Well,
whilst we're
I did
recording
send,
the podcast.
yes, I did send Ben a note of a couple of interesting plumbing myths. I'm just seeing if I can see what else I wrote down, if there's any others. Right, yeah, another one was minor leaks are nothing to worry about. People think, right, well, if it's only dripping a little bit, what I'll do is I'll just put a bucket underneath it and ignore it. That's never a good thing to do. Leaks only get worse. They don't they don't get better by themselves. They'll only get worse, and then one day you'll wake up and there'll just be a torrent of water coming through the ceiling. So if you noticed any signs of leak or can hear dripping or anything, always best to get a local recommended plumber out just to take a look. And
So what would you say when it's not a leak that is coming from a radiator or you just hear, but it's a leak from a tap which is just dripping? What would you recommend to people then?
Well, firstly, if it's a leaking tap, it's a massive waste of water, and if you're on a water meter, it is costing you money, and
I think I
it will
read
only
somewhere
get
it
worse.
costs around £120 a year if you just leave a dripping tap.
Well, I
just to
believe
run.
that's if toilet's left running, the overflow is running into the bowl or something,
right.
and that's just left. And I can only speak for Manchester, but I know United Utilities in Manchester, if you go on their website, they actually have water devices which you can put in the toilet bowl and leave overnight. and it will see if there's any water sort of running down into the toilet bowl to tell you if the toilet's running, because sometimes you may not be able to see it as it's only a very small trickle, but if you're on a water meter, that's a considerable amount of water being wasted. So small leaks, it's always worth getting them seen to. Don't just ignore them, because they won't go away by themselves. Anything to add to that?
Although, yeah, I have been to jobs where where the leak sorted itself out. A customer called us out, cancelled the appointment, so we never went. 6 months later, asked us to come and look at something else. And whilst we were there, they mentioned, you know, we originally contacted you about this leak. Well, it's solved itself. We think that maybe it rusted, and the rust caused it to stop leaking. I was like, it's probably not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's not leaking now, then okay. I don't really know what to say to it, but that happens.
Yeah. Another very common thing we come across is, this is more in the plumbing world. I know we're both gas engineers and we mostly deal with gas, but we do obviously have a background in plumbers. We're both obviously qualified plumbers. People tend to pour oil down the sink, used cooking oil and fat and grease, which is the worst thing you can do with it. I'll tell you what you should be doing with it in a minute, but then they justify it by saying, well, I poured a kettle of hot water after it, which they believe sort of melts it away and makes it go away. Oil is also like wipes. It's a terrible thing to put down the drain. It can cause clogs and bind with other things like wipes and tissues and things, make terrible clogs. The correct thing to do with the oil, and the best thing to do, is if you finished, you know, your frying or anything like that, if it's only a small amount, if you can just soak it up in some paper towel or something and put it in the bin, or if it's a large amount of oil, what I would suggest is to keep the actual oil container, such as the bottle, get a funnel, wait for the oil to be, you know, 100% cool, tip that in back into the bottle, put the lid on, and replace that in your black bin for general household waste.
Yeah, because people often say, well, what do I do with my oil? And what I'd like to say to them is take it out into the street and pour it down the drains there. But obviously,
no.
I've never said that.
No,
I never will say that.
Do not do that. No. No.
Stuart's got a great idea there, though. Okay, so I am a gas safe registered engineer, as Stuart is, as we've told you before. In order to be a gas safe registered engineer, you need to resit your gas exams every 5 years, and my 5 years ends in this November 23. So I'm going to be sitting my ACS, which I have no idea what that stands for, and I will be redoing the ACS plus core. Yes, and that will allow me to then continue being a gas engineer, and my registration details all stay the same. Now, part of it are things that I don't necessarily use every day. And this is just reminding me, the training I'm doing reminds me of what I need to do. Part of it, for example, is a gas rate. So gas rate I do on every single boiler service. Every single time I install a boiler, I will do gas rate as part of the commissioning. It's very important. The way that this tutor who's telling me how to do a gas rate is advising me is very slightly different to the way I was taught 5 years ago and that I've been doing since then. And also nowadays, how would you do gas rates?
I was looking, like, just point out this is not Ben's first time resitting. He's been gas safe for 15 years, so this was actually his third time resitting his ACS, as you've got to do it every 5 years.
Yes, plus the original, so
yeah,
it's my fourth time doing
yeah.
the exam.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just funny how things slightly changed from tutor to tutor,
and over the years as well as regulations change.
And also nowadays everything's done on apps on your phone, so actually
that's true.
The maths isn't really needed anymore.
Years ago, we had to know all the calculations down cold, and we'd be there with a piece of pen and paper, filling everything in and calculating everything, and it would take a long time. But nowadays it's all on the phone with an app.
Yeah, so it's definitely much easier. When a boiler is installed, you might be told by the customer that we need to upgrade your gas pipe. So, Stuart, why would we need to upgrade our gas pipes?
Well, I don't want to get too technical here for the listeners, but basically imagine you had a very old boiler that would have been quite a low kilowattage, say a 15 kilowatt boiler, and that would have had a very small gas pipe going to it. So that small gas pipe can only take a certain amount of gas through it to feed that boiler, and then you need to put a new boiler in, which say was a 30 kilowatt or higher, it would require a higher flow rate and a higher amount of gas pressure to be able to go through it. So therefore, the gas engineer may tell you that your gas pipe work also needs upgrading from the meter to the boiler, which can be, depending where the meter is situated in the house and how far the gas run is to the boiler, can add significant cost on to the whole boiler install. But it's becoming more and more common, I would say, as older boilers are getting taken out and higher rated, better, more efficiency boilers are being put in. A lot of times that the gas run does need to be upgraded, would you not say?
Yes, but I would not say that just because a bigger boiler is being put in makes it more efficient.
No, it's not necessarily that. I'm just, we don't want to get too much into the regulations and everything, because it can be confusing for the listeners.
Yeah, I think we need to do a podcast explaining all the
Probably we should, about flow rates and gas pressures and things like that.
Oh yeah, I can imagine people really enjoying that stuff.
Well, maybe, you never know.
I don't enjoy it. Why would they all enjoy it?
Sure.
Yeah, so so as part of my gas safe reassessment, there's a lot of other things which is frustrating that I have to redo, because there's so few jobs that I go to that will use possibly the how to test open vented flues, which you don't know what I'm talking about, and I rarely ever see. So
quite old-fashioned.
it's
You
really
don't come across them much nowadays.
So why am I still having to do the training?
Well, to say open flues on
just in
fires,
case?
you do still get quite a lot though.
Yeah, but
You don't like back boilers and
I
things
don't
like that.
find
You don't
so
come
many.
across so many nowadays. No.
I mean, even if a customer were to call us up and say, the first question they say is, do you service
Back boilers.
back boilers or flues or gas fires? And we will normally say, I'm sorry, no, just because they're quite a faff to do, and I'd rather not do
It
it.
can be quite dirty as well when you pull them out from the fireplace and everything. Yeah.
And normally there's no manual which tells you how to, on the gas fires, you have to replace the coals in a very specific way, which is all in the manual, which no one's kept.
Yeah, because
And all these gas fires are so old, there's nothing
50
online.
years old or whatever. You can't get parts, and
Yeah.
if God forbid you were to break it, anything was to break or snap in your hands, because it gets old and brittle. You just cannot get replacements, and you would have
So
to end
I
up
just-
capping off the customer's fire.
I just prefer not to get involved at all.
That's fair enough.
So that's my ECS, which is happening in a couple of weeks' time. I'm also going on low temperature training with a company called NIBE or NIBE. I have no idea how you say it. NIBE. They are heat pump manufacturers, and they've got very specific low temperature training, which will enable me to design low temperature heating systems. So that would mean larger radiators normally, or underfloor heating. All these exciting things that we want to get into. Anyway, so that's, I think, it for this special episode of Politics, Renewable Heating and Gas in Stuart's van.
Yes, it's not often we get to see each other, but hopefully, maybe next time I'll come down to London and we can do an episode in Ben's van.
Yes, and hopefully we'll have got the audio to be a bit better by then as well.
Hopefully.
All right then, see you next time. Thank you.
Well,
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's all from us.
Join us next week for another discussion about politics, renewable heating and gas. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and if you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button.